embodies what this podcast is all about, and this is the idea that we're all still building businesses. From humble beginnings working on a farm in Indiana to becoming a global entrepreneur and respected real estate investor, Zach Ullman has built a career around understanding value. Not only value in business, but also value in people and opportunities in the relationships that they build. He's known for his ability to analyze both public companies and private assets. But what really stands out to me about Zach, guys, is that his passion for financial education and helping others understand how money, business, and human behavior actually work together. Along the way, he's faced setbacks, as all of us have. He learned hard lessons and turned those experiences into insights that now help entrepreneurs and investors all over the world to make smarter decisions. Today, Zach speaks internationally about entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and what it really takes to build a meaningful life around being an entrepreneur, not just a successful one that you see on social media. In this conversation, we're going to talk about his journey, the lessons that he learned along the way, and how he adapted as an entrepreneur, and the mindset that had to change not only for his business but also for his personal life. So, if you are someone who is still building, this is going to be a very powerful episode. And Zach, I just want to welcome you to the Still Building podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, brother. This is another brilliant conversation, but we're recording it and sharing it with the world.
I love it, man. I love it. I met you a couple of a couple of months ago, I would say back in October when I joined the group. And ever since then, I think that you and I connected on a different level just because the conversations that you and I had. So I'm super excited about having this conversation and actually recording this for the listeners. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and pull up a statistic that most entrepreneurs know, but I would love to just, go to it right away and talk about how 90% of startups eventually fail, right? We all know this, that the failure rate of startups and businesses is very high. And Zach, you've built, from what I understand, businesses for over 20 plus years. And even
Correct.
today, after working with so many businesses and building them, when you hear that 90% of startups fail, what does that number actually feel like from the inside to you? And especially from you still building your business, still building um, your legacy. What does that number actually mean to you, and what does it feel like on the inside?
On the inside, it's like, heck yeah, I'm still here. I'm one of the few. But, I've done over 10,000 consultations. And to me, it's so apparent that it's just like, yeah, I'm surprised that number isn't higher based on how people operate their businesses and in their lives. And so that number doesn't surprise me. And from the outside looking in, it's like I can see the car driving off the cliff. And that's why I'm so adamant to do these podcasts, to share the message, to get the information out there, because it doesn't have to be that way, right? There's a proven way to do this, and it at the end of the day, the number one reason businesses fail is it's financials. Like if you bought
Mhm.
everything is financial, it's that you run out of money. Yet everyone hates finance. I don't want to say everyone. That's a bold statement. Most people hate finance, and because that's what we do. Our primary business is finance, accounting, taxes, stuff like that. And when we start actually talking about the reality of where are you in your finances, they have like a trauma around it. And the brutal reality is, if you don't have your finances in order and you don't understand them, you're going to be one of the 90%. That's my opinion.
We'll get to that in just a second. I do want to talk about the finance, and I'll come back to that because there's another statistic that I do want to bring up, and that is regarding finances, 100%. But let's talk a little bit about your story first, if you don't mind, for my listeners who do not know Zach. You grew up on a farm in Indiana, right?
I'm a proud farm kid.
And from what I know about you, and from what I think you shared on your website, which is Learn and Grow Rich, there was some financial struggles while you were growing up on that farm. And wouldn't you say that most people in that environment, because how environment is so important that we are all grew up in, they want to just play it safe, right? They want to say, well, I got to do what I got to do as a farm kid. What was the moment that you actually realized that you were not going to live a normal life?
The moment I graduated high school, because I did not care about anything. I was going to be a farm kid. I worked my dad died when I was 12. And I took over the farm, and I'm just like, this is it. This is going to be it's going to be my life. It's going to be awesome. I get to drive tractors and, you know, do fun stuff. And then, so I didn't really care about school. And then I graduated high school, and then it was like a brutal reality of, you know, financially, I'm not going to be able to support my dreams and my future. And I remember I picked up a book by Peter Lynch. He's a world famous mutual fund investor. And he started talking about this idea of making money. And I was like, well, I want to make money. I want to make all of it because I'm tired of being broke. And so I said, you know what? This is probably one of my mom's favorite days. I said, Mom, I think I need to go to college. And I want to study finance and economics because I want to be rich. And you know, I didn't have the pedigree, I didn't have the relationships, we didn't have the finances to go to some big state schools. So I went to a commuter school drove 5 days a week for 5 years, like 100 miles round trip almost. And I took that very serious. And I graduated at the top of my class in finance, and went out into the world in 2008 when the world of finance was falling with Morgan Stanley and Lehman Brothers. And so I worked for free for 2 years just to get experience on my resume. I would drive to Chicago every day, 5 days a week, you know, 2 hour up, 2 hours back. And I wanted it so bad.
What drove you? What did you want? When was that? What was that conversation that you really, when you realized I want something bigger than the farm? What was the driving force
I wanted
behind
to
it?
travel the
Working for
world.
free. Okay.
I wanted to travel the world. I wanted choice. I wanted adventure. You know, I have my blog. It's called Indiana Ullman, and it's based off the idea of Indiana Jones traveling the world, having epic adventures, and just living a fulfilled life. So I have three things that, you know, since I was a kid, I said I want to do. I want to travel the world. I want to help people, and I want to make a lot of money. And those were just sort of the three things I wanted. And I can assure you, I thought about quitting on a regular basis because it sucked, right? The drive, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day for a year, borrowing money from my mom to get gas to go to a job I didn't pay for, you know, all of this embarrassment as a young man. But internally, it was like, what are my options, right? Like, I don't know how to quit. Like, what does quitting look like? And I was on a podcast last week, and it's like, I thought about it, but I don't even know how to quit. It was like, what does that mean? So I just kept going, right? I was like, this is the only path that I know. And I just kept walking it and walking it and walking it. And, you know, 20 years later, I'm living the life of my dreams.
That's awesome. Let me take you back for a second because you said you were 12 when your father died. And I could relate to this, and I think some listeners could as well. Not that my father, thank God he didn't die, but he left the family when I was 16, and he actually left the country. So I felt like I had to bear this weight on my shoulders. And even though you had this passion for traveling, which is great, did you ever have this force of nature of saying, look, I'm not sure if you're the only man, maybe you're the oldest man in your family, but you got this farm in Indiana and you're spending 2 hours driving one way to work for somebody for free, and you got all this obligation behind you. How did you let go of this? I need to go ahead and continue this farm that probably your father put so much effort and energy into, and now you're just going to go ahead and drop it. Because I think that's where most of us struggle, is that we are put on this path by unfortunately our family sometimes, and you have to be doing this, and you completely just, I mean, most people have some opportunities and then they grow. You didn't have any opportunities. You went to college, you read a book, you drove for 2 hours. But then how did you let this go? Because I think a lot of people struggle with this the most, is letting go.
Yeah, so I actually, so internally, what I wanted to do after I graduated high school was I had a big cargo van, and I wanted to throw a mattress in it and just drive across the United States, work, make some more money, drive across, you know, just like this lifestyle of adventure. but the obligation was there. I was like, you know what? I can't do that. I'm an adult now. I have to go do the thing. And that's why I went to college. I was like, I had this story that I had to, provide for my family, provide for my mother, provide, be I don't want to say the father, but the man of the household type thing.
Of course.
And
Hmm.
it wasn't, I had to take a program in my late 20s to free myself of that. And, it was a conversation. I remember my coach saying, we have the same coach, so you know who exactly. She
Shout
goes,
out.
yeah, shout out to Jean Marie there. I remember her saying, Zach, your mother raised 3 kids. Your mother did this, your mother did that, your mother did this. Uh, do you think she's going to be okay if you go do your thing? And I just had like this epiphany. I was like, I'm imposing that. Not my mom, not my family, not anyone. It was like a self-imposed constraint. And I'm just like, "Oh my god, it's me." And that was the start of the conversation of, like, I don't have to do anything I don't wanna do. And there's obviously impact, right? I remember when I quit my job in my late 20s, I was 27. I worked my brains out to get this beautiful job, one of the best jobs in the world in the industry I was at, became a published author, had first time in my life I had insurance and all of these things. And I quit. And I remember my mom saying, she goes, your dad would roll over in his grave if he knew you quit. And I'm just like, oh, mom. Like who you got to be in that moment to take that and to like turn into that. And I just, I dealt with it. And I'm grateful for the community I have. I'm grateful for the coaches I had. I'm grateful for all of that. Because that's a lot to put on yourself. And I can deal with it today. Like today, it's not a problem because I'm mentally trained. And but when I was just first starting out, like man, I'm going against the grain here. And people thought I was dying because I quit and I sold all my stuff and I moved to Arizona, bought a business, and like living out of an RV, right? So
And at
that
that
was
point, were you still being driven by your passion to travel, or was there something more? It sounds like there's something more that maybe you're not telling us. That's
well.
insane.
So yeah.
That's
So it
insane. You
started
got.
off.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So it started off with I have to be there for my mom. I like that was it, and then obviously the travel, the other stuff. But it's like I'm here. My mom made sure was so taken care of. I mean, I was not liked in school from the teachers, and they wanted to put me on medication because I was a farm kid. Like put me in a chair and like tell me to sit for 8 hours. Like come on. And so she was always in the office. They wanted to kick me out of school. So she was there. I mean, she really held her ground against everyone and me and protected me. And I created this self-imposed thing. I was like, I'm going to make sure my mom never wants for anything. And I just made sure so that was, if we go even deeper, that was the drive.
To provide for your mom,
Yeah.
to give back to somebody who raised you. But
Right.
then let me ask you this question. Do you think, because this is hard, like what you're talking about, most people would just say, screw this. I will just do, especially being an immigrant. That's something that I always talk about on my podcast is that I'm an immigrant. I came to this country and I realize how much opportunity there is in this country for if you really want to make it. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't see that opportunity, right? They're like, oh, well, the government is going to take care of me, or I'll be fine, right? I'll have the house, the car, the family, and just stay. Do you think this is something that people are, and then somebody like you who like just defines limits into what you can take, started from the teachers telling you need to be on medication, traveling 2 hours one way to work for somebody for free for 2 years, quitting your freaking job and going and just moving. Like there's so many things that you do that I just don't think are normal, right? Normal people will not do that. So my question to you is, do you think this is something that people are born with, or this is something that you just cultivate in yourself and you just have to push and push and push and just raise the bar?
I think growing up on a farm, I think there's so many lessons to
Mm,
learn. And I was instilled with hard work. Like, yeah, like it doesn't matter. The cows need fed, Zach. Right? I don't care how you feel. I don't care how late you're out drinking with your buddies. Go bale the hay, bro. Right? And it was just like, and I think that I contribute a lot of my success to growing up on a farm and just a lot of the principles and values of a small town, of farming, of all of that. And so I knew, you plant it in the spring and you harvest it in the fall. I was like, oh, it's coming. I jokingly say, I say tomorrow's been coming for 20 years. Like tomorrow's gonna be different. Tomorrow's gonna be different. So I think you have to cultivate it, and then I think you have to pull out the weeds of all of societal inputs. And so today I'm just very protective of the books I read, the people I surround myself with, the all of these things that could take me off track. Because when I first started this, this I'll call it this journey, it was against the grain, and I wasn't emotionally ready. My friends would poke fun at me, and all of these things, and it was tough. It was absolutely tough. But I surrounded myself with people who said, Zach, just keep going. This is part of the process. Don't. I had to go through it, and so knowing that, I was like, oh, okay, whew, right? I just got to keep walking the path. It's hard, right? But and so I think if you surround yourself with great people, and you fill your brain and your being with the right material, the right fuel, I think anyone can do this. But I think if you're stuck in an environment that doesn't have the right, I'm going to use the word fuel, energy, whatever you want to call it, you're screwed, or it's going to be way harder. Because I've traveled the world, and one of the reasons I give all my stuff away today is I've traveled the world. I've seen rich and I've seen poor, and I was not poor. I have this story that I was not poor. There's poor in the world, and to go from where they're at to where I was started, oh my God, I'm so blessed. Right. So I just, it's a context shift too, right? I know Jean Marie always talks about our coach. She goes, what's your context? What's your point of view? What's all this stuff? What's the story? And if we can transform the context and transform the story and transform all that, it just becomes the path. And we all have different starting points.
Let's talk about this because I feel like most people don't talk about this, but the statistic, this is from whoever studies this stuff, but I think 90% of entrepreneurs go through some sort of mental issues because of this, because of what you were talking about, of changing the context. But 90% of entrepreneurs go through mental, and today still have mental issues that they don't talk about, that they hide because it's not a thing to do, right? It's not Instagram friendly. Have you ever struggled with anything like this? And how did you overcome this? And are you still maybe overcoming this right now, today?
I think humanness is a mental problem. Right? It's like I think that's the journey of evolving as a human being. Like I think it's everybody, right? And I think because here's where I dealt with. I talk to one person, they say left, the next person says right, the next person says up, down, straight, forward, backward, sideways, circle, square, and I'm just like, oh my God, just tell me the way. Like, just give me the answer. I'm a hardworking dude. I will put everything I got into it. And I think the way is, well, you got to figure it out. And so, I've spent the last 20 years trying to figure out, here's what I really wanted. Here's what I learned. So let me to answer your question. Yes, I dealt with anxiety. I dealt with alcoholism. I dealt with not being enough. I dealt with being scared of the world, scared to talk to people. I was so socially anxious. I had such social anxiety. I paid $20,000 for a mastermind, and I didn't talk to anyone for 3 years.
What?
Like, bro, I was the definition of anxiety, because growing up in a farming community where everyone, everything's safe, and then I remember I moved to Chicago. I cried, dude. My buddy left me, and I was like, "What am I doing? I don't know anyone. This is like, I don't fit in here. You know, these people are all wearing suits and ties and using these big vocabulary words and eating with 3 spoons and you know, I mean, it's like I just didn't fit in. And so I had this self conversation of I wasn't enough, right? And I remember the day someone asked me, this was so great. I made it to working for one of the best firms in the world of doing private asset valuation. The guy, it was Willamette Management, and I read these guys' books when I first started. Shannon Pratt, Robert Riley, and I forget the other one. And I actually was working in their office. I took on the hardest project because no one else would take it on, because if you mess it up, you got fired. And it was the valuation of software for railroads. So it was like $1 billion software valuation. And I walk in with this guy. I mean, he's the OG of this stuff. And I give him my work, and he looks at it, and he goes, "You know what you're doing? This is really good." And in that moment, I walked out of his office after that. I said, "I'm quitting." Because it was the first time in my life someone said I was good in this job. Because this job I worked at before, they were saying I wasn't enough. I don't have enough gray hair, you know, this, and that. I'm like, I just got the blessing from the dude. And I'm like, so what it did is it gave me self-confidence. I quit that. I went and moved to Arizona, bought a business, yada, yada, yada. But that whole way there, I was dealing with, I'm not enough. You know, these people portray that they have, quote unquote, the answer. I've spent so much money, over $1 million on myself between me and my wife of developing ourselves because everyone I thought had the answer. And I don't regret any of it, but I think the biggest lesson I want listeners to get from this is the process. This is it. And you can't bake a pizza at 900 degrees in 3 minutes. It's 300 degrees for 30 minutes. So just enjoy the ride. There's nowhere to get to. You know, the other thing I learned was the money I wanted, that was a trauma, right? What I was really looking for was peace. And today I have the most beautiful peace, and I wouldn't trade anything for it. And you know, it was part of the journey, but I've figured out the puzzle. I have peace, I have joy, we have money, we have a great life. We do what we want, when we want, how we want 20 years later. And guess what? I still got crap in my life. I got lawsuits I'm dealing with. I got people that, you know, none of that stuff goes away. It's just who am I while I'm doing it?
So none of it is going to go away. But let me be brutally honest on this one and say that most entrepreneurs, especially in the very, 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 very beginning, when you started driving for 2 hours and working for somebody for free, it's easy now to say that you were at peace. But were you? I mean, was it after you made a specific amount of money, or was it when somebody actually told you, "Hey, man, you're actually good at this," that you realized, "Hey, man, I'm not actually going for the money. I'm going for the." One of our mutual friends, James talks about how the ultimate currency is happiness. Right. But with everything that's going on in our entrepreneur day to day, we got the family. We want to make the money. We don't have the cushion of a paycheck from a W-2, and you freaking quit having your cushion of a paycheck. How do you actually make yourself realize that peace and happiness is what you're really after?
Oh, dude, it took me 18 years. I've just recently found that. So I don't want to be very clear. I would say in the last 2 years, that was, you know, crossing over sort of the I'll call it Mount Everest, is I realized everything because I was so, my coping mechanism was, I'm going to be the best. So I was bullied in school and everything. I was like, I'm going to show them I'm not going to fail because they're not going to win. This was sort of the internal coping mechanism I created. And so I would say the journey was not peaceful. The journey to peace was not peaceful. And I would say I just recently had that revelation about 2 years ago. And it was, I was sitting here and I was walking, I've lived in 24 countries. I've lived an extraordinary life, but I was still searching, right? I didn't have it. And it came to me one day. I was walking across my apartment here in Columbia. It was late, and I just remember the moment. I go, people work an entire lifetime for this. and this is just my life. I said, there's nowhere else to be. There's nothing else that's going to come. I said, Zach, you just need to, this is it. It was, it's this like dichotomy of like, this is it, and it's great. And, fast forward a little bit, I was exploring that, and I had this other conversation with myself. It says, when is enough enough? And so that's when I created this process called the Vision to Reality planning session. Is like I had to do it for myself. And I say, okay, because we just want more. I think we're driven for more. It's programmed in us. More time, more money, more of this, more of that, faster, slower, And I said, okay, well, what is my dream life? And I took a pen and a paper and I said, okay, what's my dream day? What does it look like? I wake up and what do? I wrote it down. I said, how much does that cost me? My dream day cost me $20. Because today I call it, I made it over the material hill. It's like I just want to hang out. I want to work. I want to journal. I want to create content. I want to help people. I want to spend time with my dog, my wife. And then it's like, okay, what are the things I want to do weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, once in a lifetime stuff? I call that my adventure list. For me, it's travel, hanging out with tribes, spas, meditation, personal development, retreats, dinners with my wife. For me, I just did the math, $2,500 a month. And then it's like, okay, well then the third one was what's the budget? My housing, my miscellaneous, the day-to-day stuff, $7,000. And so I'm like, let's just round up and say for less than $15,000 a month, I can live my dream life. And I surpass it. And I ask myself, what am I doing? And that comes from this great book called Die with Nothing or Die with Zero. And I remember I was actually at Thomas's Entrepreneur House, and there was this guy that did a presentation on it. And I've never heard it put that way. And I'm just like, oh, it stung. You just like, you get it. And so I'm like, okay, I've surpassed my number. I go, what am I? And so what that did is that took the pressure of more off. And then I transformed of I'm going to be the best, right? Because that helped me get through all of this tough stuff. It helped me excel, but it was also a trap because I wanted to outperform everyone and everything, and it was just in my blood. And so I transformed. I'm going to be the best to I'm going to do the best. I'm going to do my best, and that means I'm going to be the best husband in the world to my wife. I'm going to be the best at taking time off. I'm going to be the best at adventure. I'm going to be whatever it is that I wanted. I'm going to be the best, not just at making money and not just at business, because that's the means to the end. And so that all of everything I'm sharing with you happened in the last 2 years. And that's what has been able to fulfill that peace inside.
You said something interesting, and I promise you we'll move to the financial side of what it is that you teach.
Oh no, this is where the juice is, baby.
This is powerful. So you said between you and your wife, you spend over $1 million in self-education. Some things that I'm writing down, taking away here, is that you never wanted to quit. You understood the power of hard work because you grew up on a farm, and then finally you realized that you wanted to take that pressure of more off of you. But it happened only in the last 2 years. Most of my listeners and most of the people that I associate with they're either in the beginning stages of their careers or they just never realized that pressure of more is something that you need to take off. It's always it's always a competition. If you could give one key insight after 20 years of being on this journey and struggling, going through alcoholism, and only being on the last 2 years of this journey of let's say opening your eyes and understanding that this is all just a story that we keep telling yourself, the context that you were talking about. What would be that insight to help them to not take them 20 freaking years to get there? Is there something that you can tell, say, and maybe even share after what you've learned, the money you've spent, to help us?
Yeah, it's simple. And I do this with all my clients. It boils down to one simple question. What do you want?
What do you want? And then plan for it.
Like, really, what do you want? And it can't be surface level. These are the rules. You can't say money and you can't say time.
Can't be surface level. How do you get
It
past that
has-
surface level? Like, what are some deep questions? Like, what do you want and why do you
Yeah,
want
so it's so funny. I paid this coach
it? Mhm.
$8,000. I think I shared this with you to ask me, what do I didn't know this was what she was going to do when I signed up for it, right? But she goes, all right, Zach, welcome to session one. What do you want? And I'm just like, $10,000 a month. She goes, for what? And I'm like, oh. And more. I want to do what I want when I like very surface, right? What I want, when I want, how I want. Okay, what do you want to do? When do you want to do it? And how do you want to do it? Ooh. It took me so every week for 30 minutes for 50 months. I'm sorry, yeah, 50 weeks. So it was a year-long program. Her and I, one-on-one, Andrea Parker Swenson, I know this late. Oh my God, because it was so profound. And it took me 2 months for my brain to actually start imagining. And then I started like, oh, she's like, where do you see yourself in a year? And it was like that part of me wasn't working. It was put away in a closet called imagination. Right? And she just forced it open. And she's like, where you at? I'm like, well, we're celebrating Christmas. She's like, who's there? Where are you at? How did you get there? That's how I met my wife through her. She's like, I'm with my, girlfriend. I don't forget she goes, who is it? What's her identity? And I remember I said, I want a woman that wants to be with me but doesn't need to be with me. A woman that'll travel the world, someone that values education, personal growth, someone that values health. And we wrote it down. Met my wife. I said I wanted to sell my business. We wrote it down. She goes, how are you going to sell it? And it was just like, looking back, it was so easy. But when I was in the moment, and this is what I want people to get, you are the creator of your life. And it takes personal responsibility to create. Because what we want to do is we want to blame our bosses, our spouses, our kids. We want to blame everyone in the world. I remember one of the first coach I ever had, Del Hargis. I mean, you could tell him like I'm into this stuff. He goes, Zach, I was complaining about my work. He goes, Zach, I'm so sick and tired of hearing about you complaining about your boss. If you hate it so bad, quit. I said, I can't quit. He goes, then be grateful. You're at where he just ripped me. I've never been talked to. And I tell people I had to pay someone to be honest to me. And he's like, Zach, you're at where you're at because of who you are, and you're not taking responsibility. You want to blame everyone else. And my head wanted to explode. I remember where I was. I was sitting in a barn at my farm. I remember because my head wanted to explode. I wanted to yell at this guy and justify. And then I remember I'm paying for this. Let it in. 5 minutes later, it was freeing because I went through that, and I was like, so you're telling me I don't have to wait for someone to give me anything? I can just go get it? He goes, yeah. I was like, oh. But I have to be personal responsibility. And so if you're listening to this, like the secret is personal. I have 5 principles in my life. Intention, personal responsibility, integrity, dream big, and do the work. Those are the tools that I use to create a life by design. And because when you're working with a coach, specifically our coach, you don't get to blame anyone. It's like right here. What's your intention and why aren't you getting it? And I just have that drilled in me over the last 15 years. And so I think that's the secret.
Intention. What are the 5s?
Intention.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what do you want? Why are you here? Why did I get on this podcast? Why did you host this podcast? All of that. Personal responsibility. And I don't care if you got rear-ended. It's how are you responsible for it? Not from a blame standpoint, but because once we take personal responsibility, we're in the driver's seat and we can actually do something about it. If we're blaming someone else, we have zero control. Integrity. Nothing works without integrity. The question is, what is integrity? Well, that's something I've been discovering for 20 years. Dream big. You can have whatever you want. The last one is do the work.
That's awesome. That's probably one of my most favorite part of this podcast so far is these 5. That's awesome. Intention, personal responsibility, integrity, dream big, and do the actual freaking work. Let's take a quick detour here for a second. I would love to stay in this issue, but I want to also give the value that you offer as an entrepreneur. You educate, you work with companies and help them get out of the financial rut that they're in. I know that you and I talked about offline about different stories, but the fact of the matter is that still 82%, I think the statistic is, businesses fail. And I think you brought this up in the beginning of this podcast, because of cash flow. They just run out of cash.
Yeah, I don't know any company that is having success that says, I just want to quit. I'm just going to hang it up. Like, it's not. It's all boils down to lack of financials.
So let's talk about that if you don't mind for a second. Have you ever personally, let's not use your companies, but I want to understand you personally. We're talking to Zach today. Have you ever personally had a time where cash flow almost killed you in your business, and maybe it actually did kill one of your businesses in the past because of how many businesses you run? And how did you go through that as an entrepreneur?
Oh, totally. I tell people I used to have my hair used to be here. This is what irresponsibility looks like around your finances.
Well, give me an example. Is there an example of where that actually happened, and how did you cope with that?
So here was the first time I trashed my credit, and this is so fun because I used to be embarrassed about it. I quit my job. I had this, I was sold, get into real estate, make money, no credit, no problem. I was like, okay, I'm all in, right? That was a $20,000 program I'm talking about. And, fast forward, I had like 4 projects going, $500,000, $1 million projects, hard money, got partners in it, contractors in it. And, we're burning like, I don't remember exactly, call it $40,000 to $50,000 a month in debt payments and bills and all of this. I had $450,000 in credit lines, and this was the environment. It was like, yeah, leverage, and I couldn't make payments, and so I had to choose: do I continue paying the rent for my office where I held all of these meetings, or my other bills, like my personal bills? And it was really hard because I had perfect credit, and I quit paying my credit cards. And the logic was, if the business doesn't stay alive, the rest of it's going to go down anyways. And it was horrible. I was embarrassed about it. I was, this finance guy the guy at the front of the room that's supposed to have it all together, I'm like, yeah, I chose my office over my personal stuff. And today it's fun to talk about because I've made it through the embarrassment, through that stuff, and I want it to be a lesson to everyone. Totally. And dude, I decimated my credit. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And that was you just want to curl up in a ball and you don't want to talk to anyone. You just want to get lost. And but that's where, like, those are defining moments. You just keep next step, like, be the buffalo. Just run like hell through the storm. And I've learned a lot of lessons, and obviously one of the biggest lessons I've learned is cash cushions everything. And I was so over leveraged, I didn't have enough cash, especially when you're dealing in real estate, hard, illiquid assets. And the other lessons I've learned is you can't turn C players into A players. I had a bunch of C players that I didn't have a lot of money, so I'm like, hey, you can do this, trying to get them inspired about their life, about working for me, about, in the world of real estate. And it's like, they're not there yet. And so today we like to keep plenty of cash, and I only work with A players because I've like I said, I've lessons learned.
How did you get out of this? Because I think a lot of our listeners, or many, many, many people, actually are going through this right now, but are just not sharing it with anybody, not talking about this with anybody. Going back to the mental issues that entrepreneurs have, but how did you personally get out of this quote unquote hole that you dug? And I know you said be the buffalo, work, 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 work. But if you are digging this hole, which you said that you were in so much debt mentally, and as well as maybe even some of the tips and tricks that you help your clients, I'm sure, to deal with this. But first of all,
Yes.
focus on you, and then what would you say to people that are currently going through this? What was some things they could use to get out of it?
So what I sold my way out of it, like just go make more money. And it sounds so simple right now, but today I've been able to put it in a framework. It's called trim, plug, fill. Trim the fat, fire all the people like that are not earning their keep. Plug the holes. Look at your processes. For example, we just did this with a client. He has like a 20% show rate. I'm like, oh, that's an easy plug. Figure out, get people to show up to the call, right? And then fill the bank account full of money. Like we have, at least I did. I had this mentality of if I make money, I have to spend it. I have to reinvest it back into the business. And it was just like, no. I remember I read this book. He says, when you get a big paycheck, let it just simmer in your bank account and let that become the new thermometer of where your bank account balance is. Get 100 grand, let that be let that be the new thermometer of what your bank account is. Don't do anything with it. Because that's an emotion, right? Emotionally, we tell ourselves, well, that's a waste, misallocation of capital, right? You get all these people that want your money, and they're going to tell you why you need to give it to them. Buy my program, invest in my property. This is why your money in your bank account is not good. It needs to be in my bank account. And I would say, don't listen to them. Keep it in your bank account. And who cares if you're missing out on an opportunity? You're going to sleep like a baby. And then, that new, you get the anxiety shakes off, and now now you can actually function from a place of abundance and not anxiety and scarcity. Because if you mess something up, cool, you got cushion in the bank account. And that's how I did it. I just saved and I saved and I saved and I saved. I paid everyone back, and we saved and we worked harder, and I trimmed all the stuff that didn't. I went through my numbers. I was like, we don't need that expense, and we don't need that person. We don't need that expense. We don't need that person. I'm recovering. I don't know how you say this. I used to be a yes man, right? I would just yes to everyone. I was a people pleaser, and I'm a recovering people pleaser. And so I would get myself in these stupid situations that are taking my time and my resources, and I'm not making, it's not moving me forward. It's moving their business and their life forward. And then I just really said, okay, if it doesn't align with what Zach wants, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say no. That was really hard for me, because I valued myself on how many people liked me. And, because I was trying to fill that void. 20 years later, I found out I was trying to fill that void of my dad not being there. And I dealt with that, and now I can say no to people.
You just said some awesome things. One of the biggest takeaways. I love the whole trim the fat, plug the holes, and fill the bank account full of money. But I've never heard the whole leave that money sitting there and just sleep better at night. And psychologically, I think it just like you said, it just changes you as a human being. Like, oh, I have $100,000 sitting in my bank account, just sitting there. Why not?
I can say no to you because I have $100,000 in the bank. I can say no to that opportunity because I have $100,000 in the bank. I can actually say yes to a long weekend with my wife because I have $100,000 in the bank.
I love that, man. This is so gold. Let's talk. I know we're coming short on time, so I want to go ahead and ask you a few more questions on talking about C players, and again, give you another statistic that I prepared for this podcast, and that is 23% of businesses fail just because they do not have the right team, or they actually 23% of businesses, I think they don't fail. They struggle with leadership problems, with having the wrong people. And no matter how much we tell ourselves, well, we don't want to work with C players, most of the time we do work with C players for whatever the heck reason is. So you as somebody who teaches about this and who went through this before, you said you got rid of the C players. What's some if you could sit down with an entrepreneur, what would be some of the things that you could tell them to get away from this mindset of working with C players, and how do you actually get to working with A players only?
Yeah, so it's funny. I remember I was dealing with this, and it's like when you first start off, you'll take whoever you can get.
That's true.
Because I didn't have the budget for A players. I had a budget for, what are you doing Friday night? Like, you free? You want to hang out and work on our dreams together? And so, this whole idea of just work with A players, yeah, if you got the bankroll for it, most people don't. And the other thing is, A players want an A plus environment. What does that mean? They want mission, vision, goals. They want they're not gonna work for you if your opportunity isn't an A opportunity. And so, as a leader, it's like, well, I had to develop myself into an A leader to lead A players. Because when I first started, A players would not work for me. I couldn't afford them, and I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the mission. I didn't have the vision. I didn't have the plan. I didn't have the budget. All of these things. And so, what I would say is, nothing works without integrity. This is what I've learned. And it's like, when you're first starting off, integrity might be, guess what? You might have to hire a C player because that's what your budget can afford, right? But knowing what success looks like is I think the ultimate gift. Because then you can say, okay, it's time to transition from C to B, B to A. And when you're first starting off, the only thing, I'm using broad generalities here. The only thing you should be focusing on is selling. And then, I remember the day it hit me, I was like, there's only one way to make money, and that's to sell something. I don't care. Your Apple stock is based off one thing. How much did Apple sell? Everything boils down to how much did something sell, the selling, the exchange of value. And so that's how I earned my way out of my hole I dug. I just sold. I sold. Now, it wasn't slimy sales. It was actually delivering great things to great people. And then I got to the point where I couldn't service what I sold. And so my next problem was, I now have a fulfillment issue. All right, well, I'm going to hire someone that's really good at fulfillment so I can be really great at sales. And as a founder, if you suck at sales, you're doomed. This is my personal opinion. Because you can't hire that out. You can't afford to hire that out when you're first starting. And so you got to sell the vision. Not only do you have to sell the service, the product, whatever it is that you're selling, you have to sell the vision to the people that are working for you. You got to sell the vision to your spouse that this isn't a waste of energy and the long nights and the stress. You got to sell it to your kids. You got to sell it to your family. You got to sell the vision that life is going to be different someday. So it goes beyond that. And then it's like, okay, so once you have that, then you got to find someone that can catch your rein, right? And then eventually you can hire someone to do the selling and the operations. And then you get to be this beautiful thing called CEO, which is a feat in itself that we're all sold. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done, is to create a business that can function and make money while I'm riding motorcycles or traveling or doing the thing. And you just got to keep walking and walking and walking the path. And so don't beat yourself up if you're brand new to this. Go find something great and sell it. And then find someone to deliver on it so you can sell it more, and then replace yourself in sales. Was my path out.
And that's honestly the brutal truth. And I loved your answer. That's probably one of the best answers I've ever gotten regarding this. Don't cheat don't try to convince yourself that you're ready to hire A players if A, you're not ready as a leader, and B, you don't have the sales to support them. So go out there and freaking sell something. Actually, Dan Martell always talks about this. You don't have a business until you sell something. So stop focusing on bringing in people until you
Oh,
actually
bro,
sell.
I was so focused on everything else because I didn't want to sell.
It's insane how simple it is. Zach, I got 4 rapid fire questions for you. I don't want you to think about them. Just answer them as quickly as possible. I ask these questions on every single call. So just answer them as quickly as possible, and we'll see where this takes us. Number 1, best financial decision you've ever made.
Education.
Number 2, worst business advice you ever followed.
You don't need a plan.
One
Just
thing.
go do it.
Just go do it. You don't need a plan. One thing most entrepreneurs should stop doing immediately.
Reacting, like, which follows up from the previous, like, actually think this through, like, get a plan. Like, just stop shooting from the hip.
Get a plan. Finally, what are you still building yourself?
What am I still building? My purpose. Like, so I have my purpose and I'm delivering. It's literally right here. It's called The Plan to Heal the World. And it's why I'm here on the planet. And so it's my never-ending project.
Love it. Zach, you said you were a published author. What's the name of your book?
So it's actually a very technical finance stuff. It's about valuing S corps and marital dilutions. Right? Yeah, it hurts your head just thinking about it.
To even think about. Is there a name? I mean, is it on Amazon?
No, it's in a finance journal. That's the title of it: Valuing S corps and marital delusions.
Oh my gosh. Okay. How can people find you?
The best place to find me is my website, learnandgrowrich.net.
Learnandgrowrich.net. Zach, this has been an amazing conversation, very inspiring and honestly surprising what I got out of it. So hopefully the listeners did as well. Thank you so much for being here. You're an inspiration to me and I think to many people. So would love to have you back one day. And again, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.